All right, 49ers facts only. What I learned at the owners' meetings in Palm Beach, spoke to John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, Jed York, spoke to many others. And I could put Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing right on the screen. This was posted today. The 49ers, two second-year receivers, both from the state of Arizona, working out together. Probably, I'm guessing, back in the state of Arizona. Not a bad time to be there, although it's starting to get a little bit warm, I'm sure. It's now April in Arizona. There's a reason why spring training gets the hell out, and the Diamondbacks, of course, will play inside if they'd like to. They have a retractable roof at that stadium. But that's Pearsall. That is Cowing, part of 49ers Facts Only. San Francisco betting big, especially on Ricky Pearsall heading into next season. Jacob Cowing would also be a nice contributor for the 49ers. And as I go through some of the stuff that I've picked up over the past few days, and some of this is going to stretch back the past few weeks, I guarantee you that this is going to be just good insight into the 49ers, so you can buckle up for it. But as we go through all of that, we can start with this one right here. The 49ers are very, very sure about Brock Purdy being their future franchise quarterback. I know there's been a ton of noise about this particular topic. Oh, they might trade him. They're not really sure what they're going to do, this and that. And then it just makes your head hurt now. People coming up with guesses that they frame as reports about money for Brock Purdy. Guys, I made my contract projection for him 2.5 months ago. You want proof that I made my contract projection for Brock Purdy 2.5 months ago? This is it, up on the San Francisco Standard. That's what it looked like. This is what the picture looks like. And now everybody's just tossing numbers around. They don't even know what those numbers mean. The contract's going to be big. I know the fans just want it done. And I know for a fact, and this is not just based on what I learned in Palm Beach, but based on, dozens of conversations over the course of several months, that the 49ers really, truly believe in Brock Purdy. This comes from on-the-record conversations, off-the-record conversations, logic, and everything in between. They not only believe in him as a quarterback, but they believe in him as a person. And that's just as important when it comes to the franchise QB designation. That's just as important when it comes to investing the type of money that the 49ers will invest in Brock Purdy. Everything that San Francisco's done this offseason, and I've emphasized this through several shows, has gravitated around the financial implications of paying Brock Purdy and dedicating big-time assets to a quarterback for the first time in this huge QB money era. When the 49ers paid Jimmy Garoppolo back in 2018, it ended up being $27.5 million a year. That was the top of the market, but the market has since absolutely exploded to the point where we're now looking at $60 million per year from Dak Prescott, from the Cowboys, for Dak Prescott to be the top of the market in terms of APY. We're looking at $230 million fully guaranteed money to be the top of the market. But that was Deshaun Watson's deal. Nobody's taking that one seriously. The one, where is Josh Allen at? He's somewhere in the 140s, I believe 147 million or 146 million in fully guaranteed money. That's a high watermark that really matters, one that we're going to have to keep an eye out for when it comes to Brock Purdy's contract. In my projection, I had $143.5 million of fully guaranteed money. And the way that I got there in this projection was through three bonuses: the blue, the prorated signing bonus; the green, which is the first option bonus; the teal, which is the second option bonus, plus 3 veteran minimum base salaries. You add all that together, you'll get to the $143 million of fully guaranteed money. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. But I have to tell you that the 49ers wholeheartedly believe in Brock Purdy. I'm even getting the sense that the rhetoric coming from Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch has been so strong that I might even be getting a little sense they're trying to push things along faster than contracts have gone along for other 49ers who have been at the top of the market. And they've given out more big contracts than any other team since Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch took over. But I will also say, on top of the belief in Brock Purdy, there is real belief in Jed York, from Jed York, in Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. That's another thing that's just been complete bogus out in the media, on social media, just in talking circles, on YouTube channels. There's no hot seat situation right now going on in San Francisco. And I talk to these people, guys. So, and I'm at these events. I put in the work. I actually follow how things go. I'm not just sitting down in a basement, turning on a cheap camera and talking. This is based on knowledge from being around the 49ers. And I could 100% with full certainty tell you that Jed York is very, very confident in Kyle Shanahan, very confident in John Lynch. The reset that the 49ers went through this offseason was initially framed as something that was happening only because Jed York was somehow upset about the 6-11 season, which couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, that they say that a lie can circle the world a couple times before the truth even has time to get out of bed. And I mean, this is one of them. So many rampant narratives coming out of this, right? Just completely incorrect. And one of them was that this whole 49ers belt tightening was because Jed York woke up mad after the 6-11 season, said no more money for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. They can't re-sign anybody. They have to cut a few players, and then we can move on. It's just not the way that football works. It's not the way that the 49ers are working. And there are very simple facts that support what I'm saying right now that completely nullify that entire theory. And I can tell you with confidence that it is indeed nullified right now. San Francisco, as I've said over the past couple of videos, they're going to be top 2, top 3 in spending by the time this offseason is done. That is not something that would happen if Jed York were so upset with Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch and he wanted to take away their money. The 49ers were actually looking at this offseason to be the reset for a long time. If they would not have lost in overtime to the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 58, I think we see the 49ers enter the financial reset, or the bulk of it, the teeth of it, a year earlier than they did. Instead, because they were so damn close to winning the Super Bowl, painfully close to winning the Super Bowl, the 49ers said, well, maybe we reinvest and push forward with some veterans that try to take it that extra mile, because they had a damn good team in 2023. But the cracks were already showing in 2023. So it was a big risk to, push in the way that they did for 2024. In 2023, the run defense had slipped down to the 20s. So that wasn't a 2024 phenomenon. 2023 saw the run defense slide all the way to number 26. In 2024, it got even worse, down to number 29. But the run defense showed a problem. I think in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, we saw the separation issue that would truly dog the 49ers in 2024. So those are two bellwether marks, right? Bellwether mark is something that you look at that would indicate how you're going to do on a larger scale. And the 49ers already were struggling with a couple of those things toward the end or throughout most of the 2023 season. But the results were, as a totality, right, were such that the 49ers were really close to winning the Super Bowl, the most painfully close that they could possibly be. So they made the conscious decision entering the 2024 season that they were going to make a concerted push for it. Even though they drafted this guy right here, Ricky Pearsall, to open the 2024 cycle, the 49ers, and Jacob Cowing as well. But Pearsall was a first-round pick. Even though they drafted him, they were going to keep Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel aboard They're just going to stalk the roster. They're going to layer the roster, even though they did move on from Eric Armstead after the 2023 season. They traded for a veteran and Malik Collins as a direct replacement for Eric Armstead. They signed a veteran on the wrong side of 30 in Leonard Floyd to try to give the pass rush a little stability, a little extra juice, because they obviously weren't going to be able to pay Chase Young what he made, I think $13 million from the New Orleans Saints. So the 49ers had long planned a reset. In fact, one could argue, and I think that I'm convincingly arguing right now, that the reset would have started in more earnest in 2024, like after 2023, before this past season, had they not been so damn close to winning the Super Bowl. So this is not something that was done emotionally. This is not something that was done as a reaction to the 6-11 season. This is something that was done by the 49ers as part of long-term planning as they have exited the cheap quarterback era. And it just so happens that some of the details could have been influenced and could have been colored by the 6-11 finish. Namely, the fact that the 49ers were terrible in several key markers of the game during their 6-11 finish. And it works out for them that the best way to fix the run defense, the best way to fix the run offense, the best way to fix separation, and the best way to fix special teams, those are the four pillars where they really struggled, is through a youth movement. And a youth movement is exactly part of the long-planned reset. You know, last season when the 49ers went after that 2024 draft class that, by the way, has performed very well for this football team, that was the beginning of the reset. They needed to hit on that 2024 draft. I remember sitting here at this time last season, or last year, because we weren't in the season, and I was saying the same exact things that I'm saying now about the draft class. It was a imperative year for the 49ers to hit. And one of the things that I said was that even if they do hit 2024, they still need to hit 2025 because this roster does need to be renovated. You can only go so long repaying the players that you brought in all those years ago. Eventually, those players are going to start aging out of top productivity. And we actually saw that happen with Deebo Samuel. Of course, we saw it happen with somebody like Eric Armstead, who was in his absolute prime, maybe 2021, right? He was really good after he signed the extension with the 49ers in 2020. We saw other veterans that the 49ers had signed, not just drafted, but signed, reach past the really sparkling points of their careers. So just doubling down and repaying the players who brought you to greatness is never going to work in the NFL because people age out quickly in this league. The 49ers were going to have to open up that pipeline of new talent, and that's why this reset was long planned. Now, I talked about the four special teams pillars, or the four pillars. One of them included special teams, the bellwether pillars for the 49ers, right? Run defense, run offense, separation, and special teams. The four things the 49ers were really terrible at last season. Well, special teams, they were dead last in the league. And I talk a lot about special teams with people at the owners' meetings. You know, one guy who I ran into, this was cool, Richard Hightower, the 49ers' former special teams coordinator. Oh, my goodness. Mike is watching, and he made me into a Muppet. Mike, can I share this? He just texted it to me. This is kind of funny. I know we're at that point in the offseason right now. It's April. It's a little bit of a dead period, to be honest. There's a lot of speculation, but yeah, I'm going to share this. Mike made me into a Muppet, and I find it quite humorous. I'm about to talk about Richard Hightower and the 49ers special teams unit, but I guess you can use some sort of AI to do this. My wife is going to get a kick out of this as well. Maybe I send it to her in just a second, but here goes nothing. This is me talking right now. You can make me into a Muppet as we discuss the 49ers and the special teams focus. So this is what Mike is doing with his free time back at home. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it. It's a flattering look for me. ChatGPT made me into a Muppet. So is my mouth actually moving on your screen, Mike, as you do this? Because if it is, and you know, it screwed up the Joe Montana statue, I just noticed over on the left side. All right, let's get more serious about our lives. I'm back. I'm not a Muppet anymore. But massive special teams focus for the 49ers. On that note, ran into Richard Hightower, their former special teams coordinator. And it reminded me, because Richard and I were chatting a couple times at the owners' meetings, it reminded me that he's fielded a good unit with the Bears. I know that he left the Niners after 2021. They were number 26 that year, but the Chicago Bears special teams unit was number 5 this past season. So even though the 49ers have replaced Brian Schneider, their old special teams coordinator, he's gone to Washington after the dead last finish this past season. The 49ers cannot just expect that to fix their special teams on its own, because Richard Hightower struggled with the 49ers, but then was good elsewhere. I think it's a top-down thing. I think that Kyle Shanahan might be realizing that. He did bring in Brant Boyer, who also hired an assistant, Colt Anderson, who was the head special teams coordinator of the Titans last year. But they're going to have to make specific fixes to bring this aboard. And one thing is, you bring in as much special teams talent as you possibly can. The 49ers signed Saran Neal, who had been with the Dolphins and the Bills prior to that. And he's the second ace, the second legitimate special teams ace who's now on the roster. They still have George Odom. They are now committed to $1 million fully guaranteed for George Odom. Maybe he doesn't make the final roster, and maybe that's offset in his contract if he signs somewhere else. But I think it's worth noting that both Saran Neal and George Odom are on the 49ers roster right now. I think it's worth noting that at the owners' meetings, we saw the kickoff return rule amended a little bit more to where touchbacks now come out to the 35. That means you're going to have to be even more on your P's and Q's when it comes to special teams. I think it's worth noting that the 49ers are bringing in a kicker, probably a veteran, to compete with Jake Moody. That is now confirmed. We don't know who it's going to be. I've talked about Nick Folk. Matt Prater's also out there. I think they really want a veteran, so it's somebody that can come in and go toe-to-toe with Moody, because that was a disaster to close last year after the high ankle sprain. And I also think that it's worth noting that Mitch Wishnowsky, the punter, who missed most of last season, is doing really well right now with his back injury. So new special teams coordinator, new long snapper, John Weeks, the 39-year-old, has replaced Tabor Pepper. Kicking competition coming in, and presumably you're going to have your punter back in Mitch Wishnowsky, unless the 49ers decide to move on there as well. But Wishnowsky is doing well. All that, plus the special teams ace stock up. Somebody like Luke Gifford, and then the safeties, Richie Grant and Jason Pinnock, can also play special teams for the 49ers. All of that is necessary to talk about, because if the 49ers don't improve from number 32 on special teams, there's no chance in hell that they're winning a Super Bowl this next season. Especially with the defense not going to have that experience entering this season. You're putting a lot of faith in Brock Purdy. You're putting a lot of faith in Shanahan and the offense, and you're putting a lot of faith in the special teams to pick up some of the slack that the defense may see at the start of the year. Speaking of that, the guy that is, I think, going to be counted on to pick up a whole ton of slack is Robert Saleh. And the 49ers were very, very excited about Saleh being back. Doesn't seem like it was 40 years ago when Robert Saleh re-signed with the 49ers. People who try to gauge vibes and stuff online, this is just like a social media thing. They couldn't talk enough about how well the things were going for the 49ers once they finally landed Robert Saleh. Liam Cohn went to Jacksonville. That led to Saleh coming to the 49ers. But then, of course, it came to 49ers spending reset, which, to be honest, I think a lot of people online, even people who covered the team, like, for whatever reason, didn't see it coming. Were surprised by it. And since they're surprised by it, it was tough to make sense of it for them. But if we, I can just point to the roster builder, and we're going to name our internet GMs of the year. I just haven't had a chance to get to it yet, but I promise that's coming here over the dead period of April. But, in the roster builder, I gave people a chance to cut Leonard Floyd. I gave people a chance to cut Malik Collins. And as you know, there's only a limited amount of players that you can cut. I only include the players for whom a cut would be theoretically possible. And my analysis of the 49ers was that it was very possible that they cut Malik Collins and Leonard Floyd because they sucked at run defense, and those guys were aging veterans, and they may want to emulate some of these other teams like the Rams, like the Buffalo Bills, to get younger along the defensive line and hit the reset button given how poorly they performed in that phase of the game in 2024. The 49ers did indeed hit that reset button, but they hit it only after re-signing Robert Saleh to be their defensive coordinator. This is where things get really interesting because I asked both Shanahan and Lynch about this at the owners' meetings, and the talk there was that Saleh is going to lead what is essentially the run defense starting over for the 49ers. They're going to blow a lot of things up and rebuild from the ground up, just like they did in 2017 and 2018 when Robert Saleh was first with this football team. And they need to. They fell down to number 29 against the run last season. That is something that should happen for San Francisco. But there's belief that schematically they were overmatched last year. They thought they can get it done with Nick Sorensen before guys started getting hurt. And then the first-year inexperienced defensive coordinator combined with the injuries for the 49ers was a disaster. But it's also important to remember that not every waking moment of the season was bad. The defense did some really good stuff when it was closer to full health. Both games against Seattle come back to mind. The first one you win up in Seattle. The second one, you're dominating the Seahawks all the way up until Nick Bosa gets hurt. Once Bosa gets hurt, it got a lot worse. They got dominated from that point. But looking at this intelligently shows you that there were impressive performance splits for the 49ers where things were going okay. They just weren't able to adapt effectively once those injuries did hit. Shanahan believes that Robert Saleh will be able to do a much better job of that. He thinks the 49ers will have a bigger margin for error. I think Saleh's enthusiasm, too, if you're going to be looking at a defense that's going to be trying to fill in a lot of holes. Here's a look at the 49ers 90-man depth chart entering this NFL draft. The dark red, those are the holes on this defense. When you look at that, most of the holes, especially along the front line, are on Robert Saleh's side of the ball. So you're going to want his enthusiasm, his teaching ability, his flexing, his hopping up and down on the sideline as something that helps shepherd those young players around. So I would say that Robert Saleh is the 49ers' prized veteran acquisition of this offseason. When it comes to replacing Deebo Samuel, look for stylistic creativity. So when the 49ers were briefly disassociated from Kyle Juszczyk, when he was going out and checking out the market, had a chance to sign elsewhere before he came back, we talked about the 49ers' eventual, likely mandatory shift to more 12 personnel. 21 personnel is 2 backs, 1 tight end. 12 personnel is 1 back and 2 tight ends. Without Kyle Juszczyk, you're going to have to run more 12. Brock Purdy happened to run a lot of 12 at Iowa State with 2 tight ends. The 49ers now have Juszczyk back, which means they can run 20. Juszczyk can also help out in 12 because he can play tight end, but they can run both 21, 12, and maybe even 22, 2 backs and 2 tight ends. I think, though, with Deebo Samuel now being gone, and he was obviously a significant part of this offense, I think whatever the 49ers line up in is going to have to be geared toward replacing some of the pass catching and some of the rushing production that Deebo Samuel brought to the table. I don't think, and this is verified to me by what Kyle Shanahan said yesterday in Palm Beach, I don't think it's going to be a simple, okay, let's just draft a guy, plug him in for Deebo, and go. I think that they might take a look at somebody like Harold Fannin Jr. They might take a look at somebody like Jalen Conyers. I list those 2 guys because there are 30 visits who are known at the moment. They might look, those are tight ends, big bodies, and they might say, hey, 60, 70% of Deebo Samuel's 2024 production, we want to reprise through 12 personnel in a tight end role if they pick one of those players. I look for stylistic creativity when it comes to replacing Deebo Samuel. I think that's what the 49ers are going to be all about this offseason. Shanahan made a big point yesterday saying that you don't just try to plug players into holes when you draft them. You look at guys, you look at their skill set, you look at their height, their weight, their speed, their explosion, and you start thinking of plays of how that guy is going to be put into the best possible position to succeed. So depending on who they draft, and even they don't know who they're going to draft at this point, depending on who they draft, that's how they're going to try to tailor and style the offense. But I think as a general rule of thumb, they have to get better at separating, which is why the guys that have come in or will come in between Fannin and Conyers are both good three-cone guys at bigger weights. That's really important. They're going to have to focus on separating. They're going to have to focus on actual catch rate. Deebo Samuel dropped something like 13 or 14% of his passes last season, including the big one against the Rams. They want more efficiency from the receiver position, and I think they're going to have to be creative and able to do it because Deebo also did a lot of stuff well for the 49ers. Another thing that I verified was that the Rams model is San Francisco's blueprint. You guys know that this one means a lot to me because I wrote an entire piece about this phenomenon for the 49ers. Here it is. What the heck are the 49ers doing? A hard look at the rival Rams may hold the answer. Kyle Shanahan was straight up asked about this. Point blank asked about this. Is this like the Rams formula? And I mean, we wrote, 2,000 words on this. I mean, this is a big, big piece. We even had these charts about how the Rams have rebuilt the defensive line through the draft. I mean, we focused hard on this. And Kyle Shanahan said, yes, that's exactly what we're doing. Shanahan literally said, yes, that's exactly what we're doing. And it's worked for the Rams. It worked right away. They're right back in the playoffs after they went 5-12. And this year they were truly knocking on the door to top the NFC. They were the closest to the Eagles in the NFL playoffs. And that's even with Matthew Stafford not playing great football for the Rams over the past couple of seasons. He's been mediocre at best. Yes, Brock Purdy is better than Matthew Stafford at this point in time, but the model is the Niners model. Shanahan wasn't shy about acknowledging that, and he's also pointed to the Bills. And the Bills have gotten better quarterback play, so they've been a tier above the Rams. Even though the Rams have made the playoffs, the Bills have been more serious playoff contenders because they have the MVP. They have Josh Allen, but the 49ers have the top-rated quarterback, active quarterback. I mean, since he's entered the league in 2022, Purdy's been at the top of the heap. And every single move that San Francisco's made this offseason in this remodel has been centered around Brock Purdy. And you can't just go and talk about it without paying him. In a way, I think the 49ers have overextended themselves because they have talked about Brock Purdy being the guy, being the quarterback they want around for a long, long time. And this has come from all levels, from the coaching level, from the management level, and John Lynch, and from the ownership suite with Jed York talking the way that he has talked about Brock Purdy. It would be completely incongruent if the 49ers did not reach the mega deal that they're working on with Brock Purdy because of everything else they've done. It's like they've set the table, set up the entire house for this one grand big party. The party is going to be the signing of the contract for Brock Purdy. But if they never get to the point of Purdy actually showing up to sign the contract, they've really set up the house for nothing. They had to make some of these financial pullbacks. They had to get younger for several reasons. But one of the main reasons underneath that umbrella is, yes, the Brock Purdy contract is coming. So you have to financially brace for it, just like the other top 10 spending teams have had to do. The Niners are the only one of the top 10 spending teams of the past 5 years that's yet to pay a big money deal to the quarterback. So you've got to brace for the financial aspect of it, and you have to brace for the football aspect of it. And the football aspect of it means bringing in talent and developing talent that fits with Brock Purdy's skill set. So on that note, Isaac Guerendo fits with Brock Purdy's skill set. And Kyle Shanahan the other day had a really interesting quote. He said that Isaac Guerendo ran harder as the 2024 season progressed. That's something that shouldn't be taken for granted, especially for a rookie running back and somebody who had some injury issues, including ones that stretched to his time with the 49ers. But he did run harder as the season progressed, and that gives the 49ers belief that there's going to be real positive momentum entering 2025. Here is a look at Isaac Guerendo. We got to get this up on the screen. Hold on. Look at Isaac Guerendo running the wheel route How about this? Little slow-mo. I think we got this from Johnny Dell's Football Academy. It's also Brock Purdy doing some insane stuff in the huddle. But Guerendo, yes, that's going to pair really well with Brock Purdy. See where he's lined up. This is the Christian McCaffrey-like alignment. He's replacing McCaffrey against the Lions late in the season. So you're going to get a defender who's not nearly fast enough to cover Guerendo. You have a linebacker coming over. 4.3 speed. Now, the line right here is not having its best rep. It's collapsing around Brock Purdy. Purdy's going to have to step up in the pocket because he has no other choice, especially with the end zone behind him. But he sees that Guerendo's going to be open. This is an elite play from Purdy, by the way. Steps up in the pocket, finds just a tiny bit of space. Nick Zakelj actually does his job over on the left side to create that pocket. Jake Brendel, not a bad rep, especially since he's in the top of the news cycle right now, at least the 49ers social media news cycle. And Purdy's able to lift the grenade out of the bunker, and he finds Isaac Guerendo. Uninterrupted, one more time here. I wasn't pausing for you guys. I just wanted to show you how good Brock Purdy is in situations like this. At his own goal line, and this is how good Isaac Guerendo is, the former receiver. He has run harder as 2024. He did run harder as 2024 progressed. 49ers are big-time believers that Isaac Guerendo can stay on the field even when Christian McCaffrey is not completely winded or injured. It used to be that, Jordan Mason's a good back. 49ers would have had him back had the price been more right, but not for $5.3 million. That was the second round tender price. But the 49ers weren't able to trust Jordan Mason to do what we saw here with Isaac Guerendo. Didn't have the speed, didn't have the receiving ability to break out of the backfield and catch passes like this on a consistent basis. Brock Purdy, he probably can't see where Isaac Guerendo is. I mean, there's a defender in his face. There's defenders bearing down on him. Guerendo, the football field is 53 yards wide, so he's a long way away on that hypotenuse. But Purdy can trust that Guerendo is going to be in the right spot, and he delivers. There's a reason why San Francisco has really doubled down on this guy, on Isaac Guerendo. They're about to double down on Brock Purdy, but they've really doubled down on Isaac Guerendo because he does have those receivers' instincts. He does have that speed. Jordan Mason was somebody that was able to run, like a complete bulldog. But the receiving ability and the receiving efficiency wasn't quite at that level, so they didn't trust putting him into the game when Christian McCaffrey could be taking those snaps instead. I think they're going to be able to reduce McCaffrey's workload if Guerendo keeps on playing the way that he was playing to close the 2024 season. Also, don't sleep on the 49ers safeties. The new safeties, the ones that they just signed. Because what I saw them doing, and this is something that I verified in Palm Beach, is they were really able to find value in free agency at safety. On my depth chart, teal means that the 49ers signed the player this offseason. There you go. There's the teal shading. As you can see, there's a whole lot more teal on this part of the depth chart than there is up on the offensive part of the depth chart, specifically in the DB room. So the two new safeties are Jason Pinnock and Richie Grant. Pinnock, some recent starting experience. Richie Grant a couple of years ago. I think Richie Grant is probably more of a special teams candidate, but you can never say never. Pinnock, I think, is a candidate to start at safety. He was one of the best pass rushing safeties in the game last year. Top 5 PFF grade. Maybe, was it number 1? It was elite. Whenever the New York Giants used him to blitz, he was generally able to win. So he knows his way around that line of scrimmage. Robert Saleh coached this guy back when he was a rookie, when Robert Saleh was a first-year coach. He was part of Robert Saleh's first draft class with the New York Jets. So there's obviously crossover here. Pinnock went from the Jets to the Giants. He's got a great broad jump, good explosion in short area, good vertical leap. The 40's not great, but you can see why he's really good near the line of scrimmage, right? And anytime that you were able to sign a player for a relatively discounted price like the 49ers did with Jason Pinnock, well, you're not going to have the full gamut of A-plus skills. You're going to be looking for specific things that he does very well from a physical perspective, and you're going to try to latch onto those traits and then put him into the right position to succeed. In this case, maybe his ability to play near the line of scrimmage is going to be a good place to succeed instead of Jair Brown, who missed a lot of tackles and I think was part of the 49ers struggles on run defense last year. Either way, Pinnock is somebody who should be taken seriously because of the athleticism and short spaces that he has brought to the table and because of the struggles that Jair Brown had last year and because of the fact that this draft is so deep at defensive line that it makes sense for the 49ers to have signed free agents to fill in the depth and create some competition in the defensive backfield so they can focus all of their fire in the NFL draft, or most of it on the defensive line and linebacker. Back to the basics, right? Let the front seven do its work for San Francisco. I have to say, overall, because I share a ton of this intel with you guys, I've got a few more notes here, too, that I'm going to retrieve so we can go through some stuff. But overall, remember our foundational pillar theory? I could show it here using the depth chart. Every player highlighted in yellow is a foundational pillar, and the 49ers are just going to try to build around him. This theory proved to be spot on. Multiple 49ers people told me that it was spot on, but I mean, I didn't have to do that. I just had to listen to Jed York, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch. They're essentially repeating what we said on the show. They're talking about foundational pillars. They're talking about core pieces. I think anybody following the 49ers who called this a rebuild wasn't paying attention to the fact they didn't let go of the foundational pieces. It's never a rebuild if you're keeping your foundational pieces. It's a renovation. That's what the Rams insisted on calling it, and I think it's accurate. So the foundational pillar theory was spot on. The 49ers still have a lot of Hall of Fame talent, as John Lynch said. They still have a lot of all-pro talent on this football team, and a lot of those types of players are shaded in yellow. 49ers are going to pay those guys, build around those guys, and try to be as sustainable as possible. Jed York joked the other day, somebody asked him, what about the restraint you had to show this offseason? What was it like doing that? And York said, well, I think that my uncle basically forced me into it by creating the salary cap. In 1994, or earlier than that, when the league first started talking about the cap, Eddie DeBartolo and the 49ers were so dominant on a year in and year out basis that the NFL said, wait, we got to institute a salary cap. So the 49ers spending of the 90s, 30 years later, is what's causing the restraint of 2025. This long planned reset. Oh, D. Winters, that's another one. The best shot to replace Dre Greenlaw, who's the one player the 49ers were trying to get back, put on the full court press there at the very end, but they couldn't. He wanted to run his own shop elsewhere. You can't blame him. Denver has the number one defense. 49ers know that it's tough to start a rookie at that linebacker position. Sean Payton said the same thing. That's one reason why they really wanted to sign Dre Greenlaw over in Denver. Well, since it's tough to start a rookie, you ask, how are the 49ers going to fill the spot? And the answer is maybe a second-year player. D. Winters. Kyle Shanahan talks of him that way. John Lynch talks of him that way. He just has to avoid injuries. He's got to work on his body this offseason to get it in position to absorb maybe even more than Dre Greenlaw did, because Greenlaw had injury issues of his own. 49ers Facts Only is continuing right now, and this show is brought to you by Mando. Mando sent me some of their product. It is very, very good stuff. It's a starter pack that you can also get. It's called Mando Starter Pack. It's perfect for new customers. It comes with solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for our listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use the code Lombardi at shopmando.com. That is Lombardi at shopmando.com. SHOPMANDO.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. So 49ers Facts Only. Those are facts only too. Go shopmando.com. But I've seen so much of this garbage online. People tossing around guarantees, APY for Brock Purdy without even knowing what they're talking about. I think it was last night, right, when we discussed where this Brock Purdy range is. I think we actually used reasoning, and we used my connections, my sources, the discussions I had at the owners' meetings to talk about the dynamics, that there are going to be numbers that are just sent out there to trap people, to trap the media, essentially. If the media doesn't know what they're doing, they're just going to hear numbers too low from the 49ers, too high from Purdy's side, and then they're just going to be out regurgitating them either on Twitter or on YouTube. And it's just going to make people look stupid. It's going to make viewers tired because they're going to want some actual substance. And I'm sick of, all this stuff out there that is lacking meat, lacking substance. So I decided to just make an episode today titled 49ers Facts Only. And we went through a ton of stuff. And I've got a lot more that we can go through here in my notes from the owners' meetings. Kyle Shanahan, this is good. This is the good stuff right here. Kyle Shanahan thinks there'll be more competition than ever at a 49ers training camp. He thinks that there are more spots up for grabs now. Camp coached by him, by the way, not from before that. But there are more spots than ever along the starting lines that are open now. I mean, we could even go back to the depth chart. I have holes on defense. I know that on offense, they're not red holes, but there are jobs that can be taken by new players. I don't think that somebody like Colton McKivitz would be fully safe. I mean, maybe not even Jake Brendel if the 49ers draft a rookie center fairly high up. So competition galore is setting up for the 49ers, and I know that they're very, very excited about that. That's something that came up multiple times this week. Brian Fleury moving to run game coordinator for the 49ers is interesting because it wasn't a good run defense, good run offense last year. Chris Furster is now assistant head coach, so maybe by title it's a promotion, but maybe in practice, is this a demotion? Brian Fleury's been doing a lot for the run game recently, but now he's the head honcho. He's at the top of the pecking order, and this is not an insignificant position. The run game coordinator in the past was Mike McDaniel, who became the offensive coordinator in 2020 or 2021, and then became the head coach of the Miami Dolphins in 2022. So Brian Fleury, the former Towson quarterback who coaches the 49ers tight ends, moving to that run game coordinator position. He's got a new player in Luke Farrell, who the 49ers believe is very necessary for that run game. I mean, Kyle Shanahan even had a really good quote about the whole Luke Farrell dynamic the other day. Let me find this one for you. Kyle Shanahan on why the tight end 2 is so important to the offense. I think it's one of the critical things in running the ball to balance out the two sides of the formation where you have a threat to go to defensive end on both sides of the ball is a big deal. So you can take out two defensive ends or at least help double team two defensive ends when you're on those two tight end sets. Kittle is really good in pass protection, but you don't always want to use a guy in pass protection who's really good in routes and everything. So having another tight end with a length to block defensive ends is important so you can double team inside guys with an O-line and get someone like Kittle out on routes. So you help the run game and you help the pass game with somebody like Luke Farrell. That's the explanation. I went through a long time ago the contract. It's only $5.4 million a year. It's not the $7 million a year that people initially thought. There was overreaction to the initial numbers. Well, later on, we found out that Luke Farrell's actual contract numbers make him a solidly played tight end 2. It really kills two birds with one stone. You can't call the 49ers cheap if they're willing to pay a tight end 2 near the top of that positional category. Right. I think that's self-explanatory. That's a position that they would just draft or give to somebody like Braden Willis if they wanted to be cheap this offseason. But it also underscores how committed they are to running Shanahan's offense and getting this back to pre-2024 efficiency, which they were really missing after Charlie Werner left to the Atlanta Falcons. Brian Fleury, tight ends coach, run game coordinator, pair that with Luke Farrell. I think the 49ers are taking that part of the ball very, very seriously. Demarcus Robinson can play all three spots, X, Z, and F receiver. All right, 49ers Facts Only. That's the show. Next time we're on, you guys can ask some good questions. We're going to be in Whitefish, Montana, by the way, for the next few days. Obviously, a lot of video content coming. Then the Bay Area, then more good stuff. So go ahead and send your questions. Hit the subscribe button right now. It helps the channel a lot if you hit that sub button. I know you guys are the hardcore fans, the ones here on April 2nd, in between free agency, the owners' meetings, and the draft. So hit that sub button if you haven't already. Hitting the like button helps too. And hey, a thumbs up in the comment section, that also goes a long way. All right, guys, peace. We'll see you later.